First identified in Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1976, HIV/AIDS has truly proven itself as a global pandemic, killing more than 36 million people since 1981. Currently there are between 31 and 35 million people living with HIV, the vast majority of those are in sub-Saharan Africa, where 5% of the population is infected, roughly 21 million people. As awareness has grown, new treatments have been developed that make HIV far more manageable, and many of those infected go on to lead productive lives. Between 2005 and 2012 the annual global deaths from HIV/AIDS dropped from 2.2 million to 1.6 million.
Also known as the Plague of Galen, the Antonine Plague was an ancient pandemic that affected Asia Minor, Egypt, Greece, and Italy and is thought to have been either smallpox or measles, though the true cause is still unknown. This unknown disease was brought back to Rome by soldiers returning from Mesopotamia around 165 AD. Unknowingly, they had spread a disease which would end up killing over 5 million people and decimating the Roman army. Asian flu was a pandemic outbreak of influenza A of the H2N2 subtype, that originated in China in 1956 and lasted until 1958. In its 2-year spree, Asian flu traveled from the Chinese province of Guizhou to Singapore, Hong Kong, and the United States. Estimates for the death toll of the Asian flu vary depending on the source, but the World Health Organization places the final tally at approximately 2 million deaths, 69,800 of those in the U.S. alone. A Category 2 flu pandemic, sometimes referred to as the Hong Kong flu. The 1968 flu pandemic was caused by the H3N2 strain of the influenza virus, a genetic offshoot of the H2N2 subtype. From the first reported case on July 13, 1968 in Hong Kong, it took only 17 days before outbreaks of the virus were reported in Singapore and Vietnam, and within 3 months had spread to the Philippines, India, Australia, Europe, and the United States. While the 1968 pandemic had a comparatively low mortality rate, 0.5%, it still resulted in the deaths of more than 1 million people, including 500,000 residents of Hong Kong, approximately 15% of its population at the time. From 1346 to 1353 an outbreak of the plague ravaged Europe, Africa, and Asia, with an estimated death toll between 75 and 200 million people. Thought to have originated in Asia, the plague most likely jumped continents via the fleas living on the rats that so frequently lived aboard merchant ships. Ports, being major urban centers at the time, were the perfect breeding ground for the rats and fleas, and thus the insidious bacterium flourished, devastating 3 continents in its wake. Between 1918 and 1920 a disturbingly deadly outbreak of influenza tore across the globe, infecting over 1/3 of the world's population and ending the lives of 20 to 50 million people. Of the 500 million people infected in the 1918 pandemic, the mortality rate was estimated at 10% to 20%, with up to 25 million deaths in the first 25 weeks alone. What separated the 1918 flu pandemic from other influenza outbreaks was the victims, where influenza had always previously only killed juveniles and the elderly or already weakened patients. It had begun striking down hardy and completely healthy young adults, while leaving children and those with weaker immune systems still alive.